In Acts chapter 16, we're introduced to a young man named Timothy. And look how it mentions him. It says in verse 2 that he was well spoken of by the brethren who were at Lystra and Iconium. So you think about that phrase, well spoken of, it means he had a good reputation. Then when you turn to the book of First Timothy, it mentions in chapter 3, verse 14, Paul explains why he's writing to Timothy. He says in verse 15, I write so that you may know how you ought to conduct yourself in the house of God, which is the church of the living God, the pillar and ground of the truth. So Paul's telling Timothy the reason why he's instructing him is so that Timothy can then in turn instruct the members of the church so that they might know how to conduct themselves. Well, in that same chapter 3 of First Timothy, he's talking about overseers and the qualifications or qualities or characteristics that an overseer in the church should possess. And in verse 7, it says, Moreover, he must have a good testimony among those who are outside. So if a man is supposed to be considered to be an overseer within the church, he must actually have a good testimony, not only among the church, but also among those who are outside the church. And then when you consider First Timothy chapter 5, there's a small group of widows where it would be appropriate for them to be financially supported by the church. But it can't just be any widow. They had to be able to fit a certain criteria. In verse 10, it mentions that she should be well reported for good works. Again, another phrase which is alluding to the fact that she should have a good reputation because it says in verse 16 that the church would not be burdened, so relieve those who are really widows. So it gives in chapter 5, it gives a certain criteria for a group of widows that it would be appropriate for them to be supplied financially by the church. And in First Timothy chapter 3, it gives us a criteria for a small group of men that would be able to be appropriate for being overseers and serving in that role as overseers within the church. So this shows the importance of having a good reputation within two very different, distinct groups of people within the church. You want to study more about this? We'd be delighted to. Please give us a call at 843-553-5157, or you can email us at letthebiblespeak843@gmail.com.